Rishi Sunak has been caught telling lies. Yes, the man once celebrated as the antidote to the post-truth politics of Boris Johnson has now been rebuked by his own official statistics body. The complaints from the UK Statistics Authority concern Sunak's claims about asylum backlogs. The details are as follows. In a statement to the House of Commons in December, the Prime Minister claimed that the asylum backlog, 132,000 cases at the time, was half the size of the backlog left by the departing Labour government in 2010. This implied the backlog in 2010 would have been about 260,000. In the same month, the Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick and the Safeguarding Minister Sarah Dines told MPs that 450,000 and 500,000 legacy cases had been left by the Labour government. However, the UK Statistics Authority found the statements, quote, do not reflect the position shown by the Home Office's statistics, unquote. Sir Robert Choate, the UKSA, the UK Statistics Authority chairman, said the asylum backlog in 2010 was 19,000, meaning the number of outstanding claims had in fact risen almost ninefold to 166,000. So that's a pretty big error. Rishi Sunak claimed the asylum backlog had been halved. In fact, it has increased ninefold, right? So you think it's halved? No, it's actually increased by 9 times. Right? That's a big error, big margin of error there. Well, not a margin of error, big sort of margin of wrongness, I suppose, maybe we can say. So how did they come up with this bad statistic, you asked? Did they just completely pull it out of their asses? Not quite, although pretty close. So the Guardian report this. Jenrick and Dines appear to be referring to figures from the then Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration and the UK Border Agency, which included a large number of duplications, errors or applications moved to a controlled archive, and contained applicants who were untraceable dead or had become an EU citizen through another channel. Choate said, so this is the head of the Statistics Authority, given the data quality issues at that time, it would not be reasonable to suggest that this management information from the UK Border Agency accurately represented 500,000 genuine undecided asylum applications then in the backlog. Choate said he had engaged with Sunak, Jenrick and Dines to bring this to their attention and, quote, share the UK Statistics Authority's expectations for the use of official statistics and data in public debate. So in short, Sunak, Jenrick and Dines were using figures which included dead people, as well as people who had got their citizenship via other means and a bunch of duplications. So these were not people waiting for decisions on asylum claims. Aaron, we're used to, the whole idea that Sunak would be this big break from Boris Johnson and suddenly we would have honesty and competence in politics and we wouldn't have this politics in the gutter. I mean, obviously that was ridiculous. But this is pretty bold, isn't it? Saying something is halved when in fact it's increased by 9 times.
It's very Trumpian. And I don't mean that like, Trumpian rhetoric. Like it's the kind of error that Donald Trump would make, like he would like have decimal points in the wrong places and stuff, And like you say, Sunak was being presented as this fastidious, clever guy, not necessarily progressive, but, somebody who's comfortable with the US coastal elites. He's not stupid, right? We saw those private messages between Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings, and various other people at the height of the pandemic. And you'll remember this better than I do, Michael, because you covered it here on Novara Live. Dominic Cummings having to explain to Boris Johnson, about fractions and percentages and so on. I don't think people thought we'd have the same kinds of problem with Rishi Sunak. And that quote from Choate, where he says, "I have engaged with." Sunak and various ministers. For people who aren't, British English, maybe you're American English, maybe you're not here in the UK. What that means, I have engaged with, it means they're fucking idiots and I'm trying my best here. I have engaged. When you have a mistake of that magnitude, I think English culture sort of it's given to understatement, which is a shame in a way because you want people to really highlight the fact that somebody who's meant to be so clever, so competent, he comes from the city of London, he's a multi-billionaire. He could have been so successful in the corporate world. Of course, he used to work at Goldman Sachs. Well, his numbers don't seem particularly solid here. It's almost as if the elite in this country aren't particularly talented, intelligent people, Michael. Or maybe they just think they can lie so easily and that they won't get called up on it 9 times out of 10. Probably a bit of both.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 parts of this story as well, isn't there? So there's the point of all of these ministers lying, and presumably they kind of knew it, right? I mean, we don't have proof of that, but I don't think they genuinely think they halved the backlog because I think everyone in government and everyone basically understands that the backlog has massively increased under Conservatives because it's been doing it consistently over time. It's not like I don't think anyone is under the impression that more people are getting processed every year compared to the people that need processing. So that's what would need to be the case for it to be declining. So I don't see how they would have believed that. The other aspect here is the starkness of the actual numbers. So not the numbers that were cited by Sunak and his ministers, but the reality, which is that at the end of the Labour governments in 2010, there was a backlog of 19,000 people whose asylum claims hadn't been processed. So 19,000 people. You could say that's still too many. That's still too many people who can't plan their lives because they're waiting on a decision that will determine the rest of their lives. Whether or not they'll get sent back to a country that often they desperately do not want to go back to, or that they'd be in danger if they did go back to, because we know that these decisions are often wrong. And now it's 166,000. So that is huge. 19,000 to 166,000. There are 166,000 people waiting to have their asylum claims processed. And the Conservatives want you to think that this is completely inevitable. This is just so many people are coming that, of course, there's this huge backlog. Well, there were quite a lot of people coming when Labour were in government, and the backlog was 19,000. So what's changed? It's not the number of people coming. It's the fact that you completely decimated every public service in this country. And potentially you're happy to stall it because you want to stoke a crisis, a migration crisis in the run-up to a general election because you've got nothing else to talk about. Aaron, brief comment on those numbers. 19,000 to 166,000 in terms of the size of the backlog.
Well, you had Sunak Braverman recently talk about how, billions of people. I think the number, she said hundreds of millions, and I think eventually it went to 1 billion, or maybe that was one of her colleagues. Hundreds of millions to 1 billion people want to come here to the UK, but don't worry, we've got the number of people in detention. You're trying to peddle a crisis. You're saying people, we have an armada of people coming over the English Channel every day from continental Europe. But don't worry, the people in, the people that are being detained, that number's going down. Well, which one is it? There's not much for clarity of message here. So, yeah, it's stupid, it's absurd, it's obscene. And I'm glad that Sunak on this particular case got caught out.
Yeah, I was just quickly checking that Braverman claim. She definitely said it. She said that billions of people are trying to reach the UK. So I think 1 in 8 people living in the world trying to reach the UK. And I don't think it even slipped out. It was written. So it was written down in the Daily Mail. So that means that it was, written down, checked a bunch of times, then checked by the Daily Mail, and no one thought this is a crazy claim. But it still managed to get printed. I suppose, again, that's the kind of debate that she wouldn't mind having, a little, sort of looping back to the discussion we were having about Labour's very misleading advert. For Suella Braverman, if you've got people saying, no, it's not billions of people that want to come here, it's just in the hundreds of thousands, she'll be like, well, this is a win. Me setting off this argument about whether or not my ridiculously false statement was ridiculously false is helpful to me because it means that a controversy which is helpful to the Conservative Party is dominating the airwaves.